Hi, I'm Paul Morris, host of Radical Wealth Plan. I'm a New York Times best-selling author, prolific investor, and award-winning entrepreneur dedicated to helping you find and fulfill your personal vision of wealth by investing in real estate. So whether you're new to the game, an investment professional, or a real estate titan, join us to be entertained, educated, and inspired. This is Radical Wealth Plan, a new podcast presented by Entrepreneur Media. Sam Raffay, welcome to Radical Wealth Plan.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Paul, as always.
And it's been a lot of years, I think.
It's been an amazing journey, to say the least. Yes.
I think first meeting probably 20 years ago, almost 20.
Yeah, I would say
Is that
so.
right?
I think it was in Woodland Hills at
Right, that's right.
one of the masterminds. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your history.
Well, I started as a broke couple between me and my wife. We owed a lot of money on our credit cards. Got into the real estate business. I grew up in Lebanon. Came to the United States when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
Eventually got into the real estate business. And real estate has been an incredible business to be in, because you set your destination, you set how high you want to fly, how far you want to go.
Yeah.
Real estate is a great business to be in. If I was born, to be born again, I will be in the real estate business again.
That's great. A lot of people, you ask them if they had a redo, just because I think there's kind of a bias against what you currently do, because they know how tough it is. You talk to very successful people like, oh, if I had to start over, I would do something else, because they know how tough that road to success is.
It is a little bit tough, but the rewards,
yes, are good.
Are amazing.
And it also there is a little bit of I came from a different country at 19. The barriers are a little less.
The advantage that I have an accent. Others don't.
I like it.
Some like it, some don't. So
I love it.
I didn't consider it as a disadvantage. Well, because some people like my accent.
And that's part. I like your accent.
Thank you.
That's part of the. That's part of the choosing what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, it worked for me.
Worked for you because you made it work.
I made it work.
So at 19, what was the cause, or did you know somebody? Did you land right in LA?
Yeah,
How did that
my
work?
cousin was in Los Angeles, so we flew into Los Angeles. So I went to school, graduated from school, got married, accumulated a lot of debt. And, having $48,000 in credit card debt, that's no fun.
That's a good, so your financial start is minus
48,000.
Yeah.
And with a high interest as well.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but the real estate has been an incredible business to be in. And when you have debt, you have high motivation. And, it propelled me to do more and, not being afraid of anything but to succeed. I made sure that we do well. I made sure the bills are paid. I made sure that we don't go into bankruptcy, because if you don't pay your bills, eventually it can add up quite a bit.
Right.
We paid off all our credit cards, and I said, okay, well, if I was able to pay $48,000 in a couple of years in real estate, I should be able to retire in 10. And in 1992, I set up a 10-year plan to retire in 2002. It didn't take me 10 years to achieve my goal, but I was ready to retire in 2002.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Wow.
Financially, I was.
You started out selling real estate.
Yes.
What led you to that? Or
a friend of mine, he was in the real estate business, so he says, you could be a great in this field. Why don't you get into the real estate, get your license? At first, I did not take his advice, but the more I looked into it, I said, you know what? I should be in the real estate business. And that was a great advice.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Did you start in Palmdale?
I started in Palmdale, where the home prices were around $100,000 a home. You have to sell a lot of houses
for sure
to make a decent living.
What do you think is the average price house, in Palmdale, sort of versus the same exact house in LA? Maybe at that time and now, you
I
might
would
know
say
the
in
answer to both.
in the valley, for example, it was 3 times the price of the Palmdale homes, and today
In the
it's
valley.
probably about 2 to 3 times. 2 to 3 times is the
And so then maybe
price.
in the
It's affordable, So yes, in Palmdale, where is a lower priced homes, but it's easy entry for somebody as new investor.
Right.
It was easy for me to be able to invest.
Did you start with your first home that you live in?
The first home I bought, it was $32,000 home. And I called the realtor, and of course, he's a broker. I said, I would like to get this house. I would like you to represent me. He says, that's a $32,000 home, Sam. You write it up. So I wrote the offer. I said, please accept it. This would be my first investment, and I would not forget you for the rest of my life if you could make it happen.
Wow.
And he did. And I bought it for 32, fixed it up, sold it for 75. So I said, wow, this was more money that I've ever imagined that I could make in profits on a house at that time. So
What year is that?
I think it was 92, 93.
Okay.
Probably 92, because that was the first investment I made. It was in 92.
Do you remember how much you put into it and how long it took you to?
17,000 I put into it because it had major repairs. So the profits were amazing on that investment.
I have my own ideas about why major repairs lead to outstanding returns. But why don't you give me your version of that?
I mean, the equation is cost, repairs, selling cost, and carrying cost, and then how much money you would make. Of course, the more repairs a property needs, the lower the price, the more work is going to be involved, the better the return. In most cases,
should be
better return.
Of course,
yeah.
Because you're buying more uncertainty, you're buying more time.
Correct.
More carrying costs. And one of the things, I don't know if it happens to you, but the formula that you just gave, I receive these like brochures from commercial realtors that are, pitching a multifamily deal, and it might be 40 pages or whatever. And I'm like, even the executive summary, if I don't understand it after all these years, like how is somebody else supposed to understand it?
Yeah.
And the basic formula is so obvious. It's like, okay, so what's our purchase price?
Right.
What are we going to do with it? So what's the plan to reposition it or refurbish or whatever? How much is that going to cost? How long is that going to take?
Sure.
And what are we going to be able to sell it for? It's just like 4 numbers, and that's really it. And when I get these, like the prospectus for the multifamily and it's like 30 pages, I'm like, why don't they just tell me like, here's what it costs.
Yeah.
Here's what you could do with it.
Yeah.
Here's how much we estimate that would cost. Here's what it's worth when you're done and how long it would take. It'd be like 4 or 5 lines and I would get the program.
Exactly.
So I'm not the only one that like get you. Do you get them and you wonder?
And sometimes you wonder if this is real or just a formula that does not work. I haven't. Sometimes they send you all of those brochures that no money out of pocket. I haven't been able to buy a house no money out of pocket, and fix it and then sell it and make profits. I don't know where they come up with that formula. Unless you borrow from somebody else,
sure,
you still have to put some money down.
Sure.
So some of those sales gimmicks.
That's the sales gimmick,
understand.
and I even mean not even the sales gimmick, but you get like a brochure by a very professional organization. It could be Marcus and Millichap or whatever. So it's like really like rock bulletproof looking kind of thing, and I'm still like, what are they selling? What's the plan? I don't get it, And then the pro forma, they're building in appreciation and all this sort of thing. And when I look at a deal, I don't build in appreciation. I mean, you hope it's going to happen, right?
Right. Well, appreciation, it happens,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's accelerated more than other times. It depends, on the market overall and what's going on with the economy and what have you. So when there's high inflation, of course, there is high return on your investment because the property is accelerating in value.
Correct.
So it's appreciating quite a bit fast. So that could happen as well. Yeah.
Right. One of the things that it's a question I answer all the time because I get it all the time, and that is, when's a good time to buy? Are you looking at what's the market like now? Did you buy consistently? Let me put it this way: do you buy consistently over time?
Well, any purchase you make, it's got to make sense. So you look at the best case scenario and a worst case scenario, for example. So let's say if you're planning to hold a property, what's the return on your investment? If it's going to be a rental, if it's going to be a flip, with how much money you're going to put into it, and what's the return on your investment as well. So if it's going to be a long-term investment and it's going to be a rental, it's got to have a nice yield, in cash flow each year. So you got to take all of those into consideration before you buy the property. It's gonna make financial sense, and it's gonna put money in your pocket if it's a rental.
Have you trended toward more flips or more buy and holds? Has that changed over time?
It depends on the time. Yeah, sometimes like you buy an investment, they say, "Oh, okay, I could use it as a rental," but the return on the investment is not that good. So 4 and 5%. I don't think that's very impressive. You should look at a little bit more than 4%. I don't like 4% return on the investment.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. And you look at when especially you go into a nicer neighborhood, and then the cap rate, the return on capital goes down. But then you go into a terrible neighborhood, your cap rate's much higher. How do you balance that?
Well, I'll give you an example on the Palmdale area, because that's the area that I'm quite familiar with, although we have few properties outside of Palmdale. But Palmdale has given us the best return. Why? Because you're buying it for a lower price. And rental value, it's decent in Palmdale. Entry level is very affordable in Palmdale. So for a new investment, or I'm talking about Palmdale, Lancaster, and Valley. So the entry level for an investor is easy in the Palmdale, Lancaster area versus other areas. Like if you were to invest in a house in the Valley or the West Side, you're going to put in a lot of money, a lot of down payment, and when the house is vacant, there is a heavy mortgage that you have to carry.
For sure. And in some respects, it's all relative because, what's entry level in Palmdale right now?
So you could still buy a house for $400,000.
Okay. That is, yeah.
And you could rent it for between $2,500 to $3,000.
Okay. Do you have a rule of thumb for are you buying something at $400,000 that needs no work that you then rent for $2,500 or $3,000, or?
Yeah, you could buy those for $400,000 that does not need much work, or just a little bit of work, where you could rent it for between $2,500 to $3,000.
Okay.
It depends on the property.
And do you have a rule of thumb for?
I'd like to get 10% gross.
Okay.
So I can end up with 6 to 7% return on my investment.
Okay, so 10% gross return.
Right. So for example,
$400,000, you want $40,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then that's your gross, and then you think from that gross you'll yield 7% of that. So then
plus or minus a little bit. Yeah.
So then you're looking at I see. Then you're looking at basically 2,800 net on that.
Approximately. Yeah.
But
2,800. It's a decent net.
So then the example you gave me, and forgive me for, I can usually do the math in my head, but it depends on the time of the day. So the example you gave me, $400,000. Now let's say we're getting splitting the difference between 2,500 and 3,000. Say we're getting 2,750 times 12. Now we're at 33,000 gross. And if you do, times 0.7, which would be your net the way that you've calculated it, then you're at 23,000. So it's just a little bit more. It's still a little bit more than 5%. It's probably 6%.
Yeah, like I said, 6 to 7% is decent. 7% is good. Of course, the more the and
Yeah,
on
it's
the other hand,
5.7%.
on the other hand, I don't buy full retail value.
You're not
properties.
buying that.
No, I will not. Buy
Okay.
for
So I give you an
the-
example,
so-
but we're talking about an example. You look at that deal, you can get that deal all day long, and you're like, you know what? That deal I'm passing on.
Correct. So basically, let's say if it's a $400,000 home market value,
Right.
I gotta buy it for around 250, 240, 260, somewhere around in that,
It needs
in that
work.
neighborhood. It needs a little bit of work. So it depends on the amount of work that it needs, but it's
Okay.
got to be discounted. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go and buy homes at full market value.
Not
You'll
at
find them
all.
all day. Anybody could sell them to you, and it's, anybody could buy them, right? So you got to find the right deal that have some upside potential. Because if it doesn't have the little bit of an upside, you're buying at full market value. So what? What did you accomplish, right? So there's got to be some kind of a discount.
Okay.
And if there's no discount, I would not buy it. I would not buy anything at full price. I don't buy my clothes at full price.
Right.
It's got to be on sale.
Right.
If it's on sale, I'll buy it.
Right.
If it's not, I don't need it.
Right.
I have a plenty in my closet.
Right.
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 So I have somebody. There's other deals that will come. Sometimes you get so attached to this property, but there's others as well. Don't be attached to one opportunity. There's other opportunities. When we think it's the only opportunity available, no. There's so many opportunities available.
And I think
when
if you
when you think like that, opportunities will show up. So some people, I'm going to give you an example. We go to an office meeting, awards.
Right.
82 agents were going to this hall to do the awards.
82 realtors.
82 realtors. We go pass by this property that it looked beat up. No agent saw it. I saw it. So I said to one agent that was sitting next to me, one realtor sitting next to me, I said, on our way back, I'm going to check out that house. He says, yeah, it looks beat up. I said, I know. So we turned around. On our way back, we looked at the house. It was vacant. It was beat up. So we found out who was the owner. It was an attorney that took this house as part of their fees, and she wanted to sell it. We bought it. We fixed it. We sold it. So that shows you that there are opportunities everywhere if we keep our eyes open.
And you did answer the question before I asked it, because I was just getting ready to say, because this is a national podcast, and you're telling me, hey, in our area, we can get, I could get, 5%, maybe 6% cap rate all day long, but I'm not buying those. I've got to buy at a discount. So my question to you is, how do the people that are listening, and this is the money, right? Because anybody can buy retail, right? Just like you said.
Sure.
This is the money. How can we tell other people other than you, this is how you find that deal? How do we find the deals?
There are some motivated sellers that they gotta sell, right?
Okay.
They gotta move for whatever reason, and that's the buyer, the seller that you wanna go after. Not the one that it doesn't matter when they sell it. Oh, they no rush. I'm taking my time. This and that. So that's not the seller that you want to do business with. You want to do business with somebody that has some urgency. They've had some financial problems. You may think, oh well, taking advantage of some people that they have some financial problems. They got themselves in that financial problem, not me. I had nothing to do with it.
Sure.
I'm trying to help them out and get them out of their financial problem. Now, yes, they may have to discount the property some to get to where they want to get, or to sell what they want to sell. So it's a win for them. They're getting out of the situation that they're in, and also it's a win for you, because then it gives you a little bit of profits.
All right. So motivated seller. How do I find a motivated seller?
They're available everywhere.
Okay.
And you know what? When we think, a lot of times we don't see opportunities because we don't believe that they exist.
Correct.
Once you start believing that there's so many opportunities, you'll start finding them.
Okay. So now I've changed my mindset, and I know, because I listen to Sam and Paul a little bit, that there are opportunities out there. I've changed my mindset. What's my process?
I'm going to give you an example.
You gave me one, which is good, and that is that's I'm driving a neighborhood, and what I would say to you is, you probably should be driving a neighborhood that you know to begin with. Do you agree with that?
I would, yeah. That gives you a leverage that, if you're familiar with the area, you know the ups and downs and what's the advantages of that area, disadvantages, and all of that, right? So you are familiar with that particular area. So, for example, if you give me an address in the Antelope Valley, I already know the neighborhoods, so I know exactly where it's at. Even sometimes I know what the house looks like.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Because I've dealt with so many of them,
Sure.
right? So knowing your neighborhood where you're investing, it gives you kind of an advantage because you're familiar with that area. You're familiar with the homes. You know what they're selling for. You know what the condition. You know the market value for rents. So that puts you. That gives you an advantage over everybody else. So the rule in life is to know the basis of the game. If you don't know the rules of the game, you're gonna
pay.
Yeah, you're gonna pay the price. You're gonna fail.
So knowing your market is one of the
essential.
roles. Okay, but you gave me the one which is, I know my market. I took you off track for a second. I want to make sure I get back. So you're going to tell me something great. But you. So now I know the market, and I drive by, and now I see like this property that's dilapidated. And I would even want to say, okay, let's break that down a little bit, because you and I know how to get that property information. But you also said to me on the $32,000 original purchase, you went to a broker.
That was
and said,
a long time ago.
You said, hey, get that for me.
Yeah.
But now I drive by this place. It's not for sale, but it looks dilapidated. Do I then go to a realtor in the area and say like, hey, find out who owns that for me, and let's see if we can make an offer?
That's one way. Or knock on that door yourself.
Or knock on the door.
Hey, listen, have you thought about selling your house? Are you looking to sell your house?
That was an attorney that didn't live there.
Never lived there.
Okay.
Does not know the property. I don't think she's ever been to the property.
Right. So she's not going to answer the door, though.
No.
So
we pulled the records on the property, who's the owner, and we reached out to the
How does a
the
regular person do that? A layman?
You can reach out to a title company that gives you all the specs on any house. And Monarch Title would be a great one.
I love it, because one of the things we'll get into for sure is sort of business ownership as well. And Sam owns a title company, and totally happy to plug that for sure.
Absolutely.
So now I live so if I live anywhere in California, anywhere, I could certainly call Monarch Title. I don't think people know that, So he's like, okay, so I call my local title company and you say, hey, hi, it's Paul Morris. I'm not a client. You don't know me, but I want to find out who owns 123 Elm Street in Sacramento or whatever. Somebody's going to answer on that other end of that line.
Absolutely.
And tell you.
The title company can give you that information, providing that if when you buy the property, use them.
Of course.
For the service.
Of course.
So it's a win-win.
That's also a good thing too, because now I'm changing my script a little bit. And it's like, hey, I'm Paul Morris and I'm interested in buying some homes. I'm interested in 123 Elm Street. Could you send me who's the information on the owner? And whenever I buy, I'm gonna insist that they use your title.
And just to add something also, being familiar with the area and the neighborhood, I bought houses without even seeing them.
Yes, me too.
Sure. Because I know the area quite well.
Sure.
Yeah,
that gives you that ability.
Yeah.
And I want to get back to the more opportunity, but I also want to go into a sidestep, which is know your market. And I will say this, there's a few different ways to know the market. One way to do it is to live there forever and go to every open house for 20 years, and then eventually you'll know the market. If you're selling real estate, you're forced to know the market. When I bought my first house in Santa Monica, and I was very unfamiliar with West Side pricing for sure.
Right.
And it was very sticker shock for sure. And one of the things that I did was, again, I went to a title company and I had them pull all of the data of all the stuff that was for sale, which is less interesting, okay? Because that doesn't tell you what it's really worth, especially in this market.
Right.
I mean, to tell you, I walk through houses now. It's one of the games I play with Josh. We'll go through these very high-end houses. We look around and we know the market, and and then we cover the price. Oh, guess what it's selling for? But it could be 50% more than it's worth. So it's like that's the wrong place to start. The right place to start is I do say what's on the take a neighborhood, because it's very neighborhood specific. I took a neighborhood, north of Montana, which is very expensive, especially now. This is 25 years ago, and north of Montana, and I took 20 blocks this one way north south, and then it was maybe like 8 or 10 blocks east west, and there's a little geographic area. And then the other thing I did was what has sold in the last 2 years, every house that has sold in the last 2 years, and every house that's pending, meaning in escrow. And I just got the report that has the one line, so it says the street address, and it says the number of the square footage of the house, square footage of the lot, number of bedrooms, the date of sale, and the sale price. And I did it in 2 days. I did it on Saturday and Sunday, and I drove the whole thing. I did it. It's such not hard work, especially if you're interested in it.
Right.
And I just drove to every single address, and I looked at it, and I go, okay, let me check this out, And it took maybe 4 or 5 hours to do that, the whole area, the last 2 years. And then I did it again on Sunday. And Sunday, there were some open houses. So I went to a few open houses. I got to go in a few.
Yeah.
Sunday, the same exercise, which took me 4.5 hours to do, took me 7 hours to do, because I did one thing different. I covered the price. So I drove up and I looked, and I'm like, and I have to really think, oh, okay, well, I don't know how big the house is. Oh, no, right. It would say the address.
Yeah.
Say the address, it would say the number of bedrooms, square footage of the lot, square footage of the house. I'd look at it and I'd be like, well, I don't know, 2.5 million. I move my hand, it says 2.6 million. I'd be like, oh, cool. Yeah. Keep going. Yeah. But then when I would be really off base, I'd be like, okay, so that's, 1.7 million. And I open up, it's like 2.5. I'm like, okay, wait a second.
Yeah.
How did I go wrong? So I'd have to really sit and think. And that's why the same number of addresses, took me 7 hours. And I also stopped at some open houses. But in 2 days,
you are familiar.
Oh, like you couldn't believe it. I was an expert in the area, except that expertise only lasts, 3 months, 6 months. I mean, I could walk in anybody's house in northern Montana and be like, this is what your house is worth. But, you have to do it again after a few months. So that is a shortcut to know the area.
Know your market.
Once you know how to do it, it requires a little discipline, but I hardly call that hard work. I'm drinking a cup of coffee and driving from a house to house.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a shortcut on know your market. Drive around. Now we know the market. Now we drive around. We know the market either because, like you, it's taken us, a lot of years, and most people, right? But also you get the shortcut. Now we know the market. Now we're looking around. We found a dump of a house. We're going to call Monarch Title. We're going to say,
who's
what's
the owner?
Yeah. And I will get into it, but I have to ask the question already. How else can I do it? How else do I find opportunities other than finding the one that looks like it's empty?
I think reaching out to homeowners that are out of state.
Okay.
That they have rentals.
Okay.
And also in every property, you want to see what's the highest and best use for that property. Even land in a prime location could be a great value for an investor as well. And that's a different set of rules and knowing a different set of zoning and what have you. A little bit more complicated than to purchase a single family home. But that's another way that to build wealth, owning land, vacant land, for example.
So now we're going to call Monarch Title. We're going to say, hey, when we buy, we're going to use you. We found the location. It looks distressed. We want to know the owners. Oh, okay. So you mail it to absentee owners, but again, how do I get that list?
You could ask for an absentee owners list for a certain area or zip code or demographic area that you're interested in, absolutely you can get it.
Sure. So now I'll just use the area in Santa Monica that I did my drive around with, and now I know that I deeply understand for the 3 or 6 months that information's still good. I deeply understand values in the 20 blocks in one direction, 8 blocks in the other direction, and then I call your title company and I say, hey, I would like a list of absentee owners.
Yes.
And absentee owners are actually easy to find because what you're finding is people that have the owner, so it's the owner on title,
right,
and they have an address that's different than the property that you're looking at.
Correct.
And you could even say it doesn't have to be out of state because it's a second home.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a second
could
home.
be 50 miles away.
Yeah, or you could do a pool on. I would think. I would think any absentee, if it's small enough area, you say, hey, I want all absentee owners.
They're tired of being landlords. The tenants that they had, they were horrible tenants, and they left the property in bad shape. So there could be different circumstances.
And then in that letter that you send to them.
I get those letters all the time.
I get them all the time.
So yeah.
Right. But other people
if
don't
they
get
don't
them
work,
all the time.
people would not be sending them.
That's correct. And other people don't get them. So
yeah.
I'm halfway tempted. I could say, we could leave again in the show notes. We could leave an example of one of those letters. You could also honestly go to ChatGPT.
Yes.
And if I were
draft
making
a letter, if
I were making a prompt for ChatGPT, I would say, I'm not looking to, because they get a lot of proposals from realtors too. And you say, I'm not looking to list your property. I'm an end user. That's probably jargon. It's like, this is a house I'm interested in buying for myself.
Correct.
Are you, if you have any interest in selling, would that be okay?
Yeah.
You could also possibly the title company, or maybe you pay a small amount to the title company, and you could get phone numbers.
Yeah. In some cases you can. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you get phone numbers. Maybe you would send a text message. Maybe you would just call them. You certainly could mail to them.
Yeah.
In a mailing situation, I would say that, you're not sending out thousands of these. So I would handwrite the address on the envelope so that it doesn't look like junk mail.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like a junk mail solicitation.
And in some cases, people will throw the mail away. In some cases, they will open it. So it doesn't mean that everybody's going to open the mail.
No.
It doesn't mean that everybody is going to say, oh, yeah, I want to sell my property. So you need to find those few that are serious about selling, that they're tired of being landlords, and they are tired of their tenant that left the property in bad shape and they have to deal with the repairs again.
And I would take it even a step further and say that, I think here's the thing. Again, as we're talking about real people that are listening, that are going to use this method that we're suggesting, they're probably not looking to buy 10 houses.
Yeah, exactly.
So they don't need 50% to answer. They don't need 10% to answer. If they get a few answers, that's solid enough. As being in this business, and I also know deeply the way that wholesalers work, is wholesalers will do this, and wholesalers they'll find all the absentee owners, but then it becomes more of a solicitation. It looks more like a solicitation. And also the good thing that wholesalers do is they'll keep mailing.
Correct.
So
one way, like I said, absentee owners.
Right.
Two is like, you survey properties, you drive through neighborhoods, you see what's out there, you find properties that are in bad shape or distressed. Also, having a great relationship with a realtor that's always keeping an eye for you and finding you properties. And in a lot of cases, realtors, they they keep scanning properties, looking at properties and finding deals. This makes sense. That does not make sense. They're expert in their neighborhood, and somebody that is that knows what they're doing and has done real estate business for a long time. So they understand value. They understand repairs and rehab cost and all of that. So they could be also scouts for you.
And how do I find a realtor? So, realtors make money when they sell a property.
They sell a property, correct.
So now I understand the value of the area because I've done that myself, which I think is very important. And I have an idea of how much I'm willing to pay. How do I find the right realtor for that?
It's the realtor that also you have a good relationship with, that they keep you in mind all the time when a good property shows up, right? A realtor that's active, that is always involved with the with other realtors, that they talk to each other, talk about deals. Oh, this is a great property. I found this one. I was looking at this one today. It makes a lot of sense. So a realtor that has sociability with his peers, that they discuss valuation, property values, and what have you. Somebody that's active, that's the realtor that you want.
I would also ask further again, how do I find that? But I'll add one criterion, and that is I would want a realtor who represents investors.
Yeah. That or has invested himself.
Okay.
Because a realtor cannot afford to buy every single property they find.
For sure.
Right. So they're going to pass it to their investors. So yeah, that they've done, like they've had some experience in rehab cost. They do have also, some of them, they already have relationships with vendors, that they do roofing, with somebody that does drywall, with somebody that does different things. So they do have each realtor, the active ones and the ones that they do investing, they already have their core people that they work with all the time, and they give them good price for repairs.
Okay, we've broken it down, but now we're talking to somebody who has never done this before. So where do I start finding a realtor who understands investing and represents investors or has bought property themselves?
How
do I do it?
I would ask, hey, listen, have you done any investing yourself? Do you, have you worked with investors? And if they have, and they've done investments themselves, they already know the process. They already know the valuation. They already have an idea of repairs and the cost of repairs. So those are a good guide for an investor.
And one of the things, as I'm just thinking it through, is that I think a great way to do it would be to physically walk into a brokerage in that area and ask to see the manager.
Yeah.
And then say, hey, I'm a potential buyer. I'd like 5 minutes of your time or 10 minutes of your time. And most managers would just say yes to that. If they said no, that would be a red flag in and of itself.
Right.
And then I would go to, so let's just say, if we're talking Palmdale, Antelope Valley, Sam's office is number one in that area. But let's just say you and I, they take the two of us and they drop us in any city. Let's say that city is Nashville, Tennessee. I've heard that's booming. Or Austin, Texas, it might be too booming. But
yeah,
they drop us in a city, wherever it is, you and I get relocated because of work. So this is where we are. We figure out an up and coming neighborhood. We do all the research. We figure it out. I would go you could go to Google and find a brokerage that has a bunch of ads. You could go to Zillow and see who's selling a bunch of houses. And I would walk into that office and of whatever brand it is that has major market share. And I would say, I'd like you to refer me. I want to speak to the manager for 10 minutes. I would like you to refer me to a realtor who regularly represents investors and possibly has invested themselves in, this neighborhood in Nashville?
Yeah. Well, you got to be ready, willing, and able as well.
Oh,
because
yeah.
if you're not ready, even if he shows you the best property, you're not
Right.
going to be able to pull the trigger.
Right.
And it's not going to sit for a long time. You're going to be able to make a decision quick because, like I said, if it's a great value, it's not going to sit on the market for a long time. Somebody will take it. So you got to be able to make a decision. I'll give you an example. I was passing by a real estate agent in our office, and we were just saying hi, and she said, "I'm meeting with my client. They're coming in to sign on a sale." I said, "What kind of property is it?" She did say, "Okay." She gave me the description of the property. I said, "Give me 5 minutes. I want to go see it, and I may want to buy it." So I go to the property. I like it. I called her. I said, "You know what? I like this property, and I'm going to bring you an offer." So I brought her an offer that was better than the other offer that she had, and she ended up accepting my offer, and she ended up selling it to me. So you got to be able to make a decision quick, because if you say, "Oh, I'll wait till tomorrow," that property would have been gone.
Absolutely.
But I immediately saw the property, I saw the potential, and I made the offer.
Yeah.
Because I know, my familiarity with the market there, given me that opportunity to be able to act quick.
Right. And that I'll take sort of two scenarios. One, I've had that same thing happen to me. There was a realtor who represents a lot of multifamily, and he does a huge business. And the only way that you do a huge business representing multifamily is you're identifying great deals, and you're putting those great deals in front of your clients who will buy.
Correct.
And so even though I was the broker owner, I knew that this realtor was finding great stuff. And I said, I want to buy. How do I get to the top of your list?
Yeah. Yeah.
And his answer to me was, he laughed because, if it was like, "Oh, well, you're the broker owner," he laughed. He said, "Okay, to the top of my list. Well, if you really want to know, here's what you have to do. I'll call you. First of all, I'll put you on my list. You'll get all the ones that we release, and you'll all be getting them at the same time. So if you get something really great, call me."
Yeah.
So, okay, well, in order to do that, you have to tell. He goes, "I don't care if you say no.
Yeah.
You say no, no problem. The only thing that's going to mess me up is if it takes you 2 days to say no, then you've messed me up.
Yeah.
I'll call you, you want to run out and look at it. I'll show you a lot of times he's selling for his own clients. So he knows the property very well because he sold the property to this guy.
Right.
They've had it for 5 years. Maybe they fixed it up a little bit, whatever it is. This realtor really knows the property. So you can run down there. I'll get you the rent rolls. The rent rolls are all legit. I'm going to need a yes or no, within a few hours.
Yeah.
If you do that. And then the other funny thing he said to me is, "And then whatever I tell you to do when we're in escrow, you have to do it."
Right.
I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "I'm pretty sure." He goes, "Well," I go, "Okay, I'm sure."
Yeah.
And then he called me, and the first one that he showed me, I bought. And he was nervous. He's like, "Hey, listen, this is our first phone call. I don't expect you to say yes." I said, No. I looked at it. I'm sure. I'm sure." He goes, "Okay, we can do it, but I'm selling it from one client of mine who's I've bought and sold for a bunch of stuff for. I'm selling it to you." Obviously, he thought it was a great deal, but they needed to move the money or they needed to do whatever.
I found you a house in Palmdale.
I do remember. I do remember that. Yeah.
It's probably tripled in value.
Yeah, I think we sold it, but we waited till I think we sold it probably doubled in value.
Yeah.
Because it was very distressed. We put a little bit of money in it and we sold it. I think we ended up with 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the sort of thing. And then when I went to open escrow, he said, "Well, I said, "Well, I want to use my lender." He said, "Well, you have to use my lender." I said, well, I don't want to use your lender. I want to use my lender.
Yeah.
He goes, well, remember what I told you. You have to
do what I
do what I tell you to do. I go, yeah, but, and he said, look, I'm getting no, he goes, look, I'm getting no kickback. There's no benefit to me. He goes, but here's the thing. I've used the same lender. The seller has used the same lender. And he goes, if there's a delay on your file, which there could be, because my finances are, I have so many LLCs, it gets very complicated and it can really be a delay. Because if there's a delay on the file and you use my lender, who the seller has also used, we're going to call the guy. He's going to say, everything's fine. We just need another 12 days. It's going to be yes all the way.
Yeah.
We use your lender. If it's 1 day late, they're going to be like, hey, get this guy out of escrow. He's not performing. So, okay.
Yeah.
They used their lender, and there was a delay, by the way.
Oh, there was a delay.
Yeah, there was a delay, but they're like, we're okay with that, and then close that property. So that's one way, is to be ready. But I will say that you could go as a novice investor, and it doesn't have to be that harrowing. So you could go to a novice investor. You go to somebody they sell a lot of investment properties in the area. You go, look, I'm new to this. I can't promise you that I'm going to say yes immediately, but show me what you've got. Tell me what you think is good about it. And I might pass on the first few and see how they go. And you could actually do that. So if you showed me that house in Palmdale. You're
testing the water, yes.
Yeah. But if you show me that house in Palmdale, I'm pretty sure this is a good one. Sam tells me it's a good one, but I'm new, it's a new relationship. I'm going to pass on this one, but I'm going to watch it.
Yeah. And a lot of times, when you're dealing with a realtor that is a friend, right? He's extra cautious. And sometimes that extra cautiousness could cost you a property.
Sure.
It's hard for me to, for example, to tell my friend, oh, this is a great investment.
Oh, yeah.
Because in case something does not go right, he's going to say, oh, Sam told me about this property. That's a great investment. Yep. And it turned out to be not so great.
Yeah. It's the one thing that the guy had the same concern. He's like, oh, you run the firm. And if I just sell it to one of my investors, I've sold them 10 properties, 9 have been good.
Yeah.
If this one turns out bad, it's okay. If I sell you one, it's bad.
Yeah. But honestly, I don't remember a bad investment.
That's correct.
It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Sometimes you may not see something, but overall, you will be ahead.
You just said something amazing. Don't remember a bad investment. Tell me how that is possible, because people make bad investments all the time. But you tell me you don't even remember a bad investment.
I made a mistake one time. I found a property that I was looking at this. The second was for closing, not the first.
Okay.
And I thought it was the first that is making the, doing
right.
I'm sorry. The first was for closing, not there, and there was a second on the property, which I was not aware of.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So the first foreclosed, but the second it remained on the property. I ended up having to pay the second note. It was a small amount, but it just took away from the profits that I thought I was.
But wouldn't your title company save you from that?
A title company would save you for sure. I did not do my homework, by the way.
Right. And if you, again, not to plug the title company again, but if you have the relationship with the title company, they'll tell you immediately that there's a second before you, before you close.
I think, I'm trying to remember that it's been years ago.
I will run back and
second,
scream at the title company.
The second was for closing. And there was a first. So I bought this. I paid off the second, but there was a first note in first place, so I had to pay that. Yeah.
Right.
No, the second was for closing, not the first. Because if the first was for closing, then the second would be wiped out.
Would be wiped out.
Yeah.
And so in any case, a title company
could tell you that, this is the second, so there is a first note and the amount of this much.
And that's a bit of jargon which can sound daunting to somebody who's never done it before. But again, the first, the second, the third, these are just amounts of money that are owed, that are secured by that property. And if you get the title rep and it takes the title rep, 5 minutes, to look at it and say, yes, here's how much money is owed on the property.
They can give you exactly all the notes, the liens, the taxes, whatever is owed on the property, they can give it to you in few minutes.
And it's impossible for them to get it wrong. It's highly unlikely, but even if they get it wrong, then the title company is on the hook.
Yes.
Because that's what the title insurance is.
Yeah, if they insure the title, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So that there was another one. I knew you had given me a bunch of stuff.
I mean, real estate is a game, like all games, right? Golf is a game, football is a game, soccer is a game. But you got to learn the rules of that game to do well with that game.
Right.
So knowing the rules is essential
right.
to any game that you want to play.
One of the challenges that I have when I do this podcast is, I talk to someone like you who's had more than 30 years, right?
Yeah.
More than 30 years experience, and the stuff's just obvious to you. And then you're telling me, and I've been in the business for 30 years, it's obvious to me. But that's why I stop at these little places, because somebody's brand new getting into it, we got to make sure that we're not using jargon or covering it. But I think, so far, not so far so good. So far, excellent. The other thing that you mentioned was highest and best use. And one of the examples of that would be, for example, there are some properties, if you go in a neighborhood and they're all just residential homes, there are some properties that will have like an R1, sorry again with the jargon, but R1 is like a one house on one lot, and you can't build a second house on the lot. But sometimes you'll have a neighborhood of R1s, but if you could go again to the title company and go, hey, show me a different zoning for these properties.
I'm going to give you an example of highest and best use.
Perfect.
In California nowadays, you can add an ADU.
Yes.
So if you have a large enough lot, you can add an ADU to it. Mm-hmm. And then again, now that you can add a junior ADU.
Yeah.
So you're capitalizing on the highest and best use of that lot.
Yes.
So you may buy a small house on a big lot that you can take advantage, and you may end up paying a little bit more. But remember, you're going to add an ADU. You're going to add a junior ADU.
Yes.
So you have two sources of income behind you.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
So you got to look at what can I do with this property? What can I improve on? So sometimes adding a bathroom could add a huge value to the property as well.
Right.
So these are the things that you need to look at and look for. And as a new investor, you need to learn these things. Mm-hmm. And they're easy. I mean, it's not rocket science.
It is true, especially if you find somebody that has a lot of experience doing it, and you can kind of follow along with them. And that's sort of back to the realtor who really knows the area. They drop us in Nashville, we really learn the area, but I would go right to that realtor that really knows the area. But now we know another thing to ask for. So we're going to say, hey, we're going to check out some absentee owners, distressed properties. We're going to go to an investor, to realtors that help investors. But also you could ask an architect too. You could go in and talk to an architect that specializes in the area.
Yes.
And you could go to a realtor that specializes in this sort of thing and say, hey, which are the properties that can easily fit an ADU and a junior ADU,
right.
And it doesn't necessarily seem like it even when you're in the area, but I've often been surprised when you pull like a neighborhood map that, a lot of the houses are built at the same time. You've got every single one is an 8,000 square foot lot. And then they've got, same basic footprint. Oh, it's a 3.2, it's a 2,200 square foot 3.2.
Right.
And you're like, okay, well, in this basic footprint, that allows an ADU of this size and a
Correct.
junior ADU.
Absolutely.
And the rules, and it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing that the rules are complicated and very local, but the way you deal with that is you go into your local area and you find an architect that specializes in that area, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we've done 8 of these, we know exactly what will fit and what won't fit, and the city likes this and doesn't like that.
Right.
So that you're not backing into it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people look at a property and say, "Oh, it's a little bit overpriced," but it's a large lot.
Yes.
So it may be a little bit overpriced. So what's the value of that ADU?
Right.
How much would that enhance the
Right.
value of the property
Right.
after you build it?
Again, you can use the complications to serve you if you understand the complications.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's SB9, which I don't really fully understand, but that's a lot split. And so if the lot is a certain size and the house has only a certain amount of coverage for it,
Right.
you could build a second house and have an automatic lot split, and now you've got 2 properties.
Yeah.
But I don't even understand it, so that's okay. I would, again, if I was interested in this neighborhood, certain neighborhood, you go to the architect and say, hey, how are your clients maximizing? I would also go to an architect who does work for investors, and they say, hey, how are your investors maximizing, property in this area?
There was a house selling in my neighborhood, and I thought the guy that bought it paid way too much for it. What he did, he split the lot and built 2 houses.
Yeah, right.
So he
he
knew something I didn't know. Right?
Even with your experience,
even with my experience,
even in your own
I said,
neighborhood.
Oh, man, he split the lots. Now it makes sense.
Right. What experience, if at all, do you have with wholesalers? And do you recommend?
I bought some houses from wholesalers. Wholesalers are negotiable as well. It doesn't mean that if they send you a price for a property, that doesn't mean that this is the only price that they would accept. If it doesn't make sense, you can negotiate with them. But you got to make sense to them as well, because they're familiar with the valuation and they run their own numbers as well. So,
and a wholesaler, what they do is they do all of the legwork that we've been talking about.
well, what they do is they find a property at a good price.
Right.
They add their fee to it.
Correct.
And then they sell it to you.
They resell it. That's
Yeah.
right. But what I'm saying is the way they get the property is they essentially do the legwork that we're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
So they run around,
Exactly.
neighborhoods, and they have a machine.
Correct.
That so let's say a wholesaler, they would have a big, huge area, and they would know it's a good area for development already because they know investors are interested in it. And then they have a machine, and they call every house in that area, say, hey, we're a potential buyer for you. How much would you take? Are you interested in an all cash offer? Da, da, da. And they get all of that. Property. The thing that I was surprised about, because I'm always like, well, now I've put a middleman in, and it's going to cut the margin down. And I know professional investors that run big funds, and they use wholesalers.
Yeah.
Because the wholesalers have streamlined the process of finding those sort of diamonds in the rough, and they're willing to take so little.
Right.
So you might have a guy on our team, bought a house that I think he paid $700. It was one that was easy to convert into something really great. And he bought it for, I think the wholesaler, you can find out what the wholesaler paid for it.
Yeah.
And the wholesaler had paid $700, and, they were trying to get, $790 or whatever. And he said, you know what, $725 is the best I can do. And there was a negotiation, and, they said no. And, 2 weeks later or whatever, they said, hey, we'll take the $725.
Right. Right.
And I'm like, wow, that's that's a very little amount of money to find this property, which really was very easy. $60,000 he put in. There was already a garage. He converted it to an ADU.
Yeah.
He's out the other end for $1 million.
Elaborate a little bit on what you just said. We just bought a property 3 months ago from a wholesaler. It was 3 houses on 20 acres.
Wow.
In a remote area, but we thought it could go. If we could not sell it, we could rent them, right? But it turned out that we were able to sell that property. It has a lot of potential. If I wanted to deal with like a mobile home park or something like that, it would yield a lot, more than what I got from the sale. But it turned out to be a decent profit,
right,
on that deal.
And sometimes that's what we do as investors. The property that I mentioned that I bought from the realtor, like, hey, put me to the top of your list. I had big plans for it, and I was, put in permits, and I spent money on an architect, and even spent money to get the building ready for renovation and the whole 9 yards. And somebody came by and offered enough money for me to just
walk away.
Say, you know what? Yeah. Let them have the hassle.
Exactly.
Forget it. I know there is higher and better use. That's why I bought it. But I just, the offer was sufficient enough that, I'm not really a builder and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Or you don't want to hassle with all of that.
Do you use 1031 frequently?
Not frequently. Once in a while. Yes, but I don't use it frequently. It just delayed taxes. So basically, I'm passing on the taxes to my kids.
Oh, so, yeah. Unless the property, when you die, maybe it's only your home. We'll have to check that. When you die, does investment property go to market value? Or
I would say it would, but
then you're not passing the taxes on to your kids.
I haven't done many. I have done few 1031, but not many. I don't know why. I just think I don't want to delay taxes.
Delay.
It just you got to pay it now. You got to pay it later.
Right.
Some people do great with the 1031 exchange.
Right.
I'm one of those that haven't done much of those.
And if we put the math out on the board, you can see how much. I understand what you mean.
All of those advantages that you have with real estate that you don't.
They're possibilities.
Yeah, all those possibilities, exactly. It's exchangeable. It's rentable.
Yeah.
It's appreciable. It's leverageable.
Yeah.
All of those abilities that real estate has, other properties, other investments don't have.
Right.
So real estate is a great way to invest. And I know that there are other ways. Businesses is another way to invest.
Right.
And businesses usually gives you much more cash flow
Correct.
than real estate does. But the business, in 99% of the cases, you got to pay cash for the business. Real estate, you put 5, 10, 15, 20% down.
That's
and the
right.
rest is the bank's money.
That's right. And then when you
or
add
seller will carry.
Seller carry, which is, another way of, especially when you're doing those. I think by the time somebody puts it on the market with a realtor, it's harder to have a seller carry conversation generally. But when you're reaching out to these absentee owners, a seller carry is totally possible.
Yeah.
And what we mean by that is that the seller will loan some of the money for the purchase of the house. They may loan all the money.
Yeah.
The seller is, in essence, playing bank.
Correct.
And if sellers willing to take second position, again, this is a bit of jargon, but that you then go get your first position loan. Maybe you put, instead of putting down 20%, seller's going to kick in some money. Now you can put down just 10%, and the seller's 10% goes behind the first loan.
There's a lot of creative ways you can make an opportunity a great opportunity.
Right.
So for example, a house that's $600,000, you're buying a house for $600,000, and another house you could buy it for $500,000. The $600,000 house is seller will carry at a very low interest rate, which is a better deal.
Yes. And I did exactly that.
Once you know the rules of the game, you can structure something for a win-win.
Yeah.
For you and for the seller, everybody wins at the end.
I had one person in particular that used to look for property for me, and he would always approach the sellers directly and try to put the deal together. And I just couldn't make the deal work. And finally, I tried to figure out how I can do it, and they just wouldn't take low enough, and I couldn't make the deal work. And I said finally a final no to it. And then he came back, a month later and said, well, the seller will finance.
See?
And then I just redid the math. I'm like, okay, let's go.
Now it makes sense, right?
Because instead of, $250,000 down, I needed to put $80,000 down.
Yeah.
And and it didn't cash flow properly when you only put down 80,000,
Right.
It would have cash flowed okay at 250. So now I'm underwater, but I didn't mind that. I'm like, okay, so I don't have to tie up 250,000 cash. I can tie up 80,000 cash.
Correct.
And if I'm minus a few dollars, a month, I can afford that, because I use other income to offset that. And that got me into a deal that I otherwise wouldn't have done. And then, just over time, again, I looked for that particular property. The only reason why I was interested in it, and it was a dump of an area, I remember I was going to do it with an investor who knows LA, super well. And I'd done other good deals with him. I sent him the math. He's like, yeah, count me in, I give him the address. He's like, I'm going to drive by, but I'm in. He drives by, count me out, because it's like next to a public storage and it's under the highway, He knew the area, but he didn't realize how bad it was. And the reason why I still was willing to do that, was still willing to buy that property, was it was right across the street from a hospital.
I mean, storage units is another great investment.
Yep.
If you're looking for cash flow.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never done that, but you did.
One storage unit, and it turned out to be pretty well purchased, and it just generates cash flow every month. And it's easy to manage. Mm-hmm. You don't have multiple employees.
Right.
And that makes it an enticing investment.
How many storage units?
98.
98.
Yeah.
And where is it located?
It's in Palmdale.
And give me some details of that deal. Like, how much did you pay?
So
what is
it cash flows around $12,000 a month.
Mm-hmm. And what did you pay for it?
At that time, $750.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you say cash flow, so you're cash flow positive, 12,000.
Actually, it came with 4 apartments.
Wow.
2 houses.
Yeah.
And a cottage.
You see those deals sometimes. Yeah.
I think it was $700 or $750 at that time.
That's amazing.
But that was like, when the market was down.
Yeah. But it's also,
so at that time, each apartment was renting for $550. Now each apartment is renting for $1,100.
You mean the storage unit?
No.
The apartments.
4 apartments.
4 apartments. Okay.
2 houses and 1 cottage.
That's crazy.
It nets $12,000 a month.
Yeah.
That's after we pay for 1 employee.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And repairs, minus repair. $12,000 is the net cash flow a month.
And what happens after a certain amount of time when somebody doesn't pay? Then they auction off the stuff.
You don't have to deal with repairs.
Right. That's right.
You don't have to deal with utilities.
Yeah.
You don't have to deal with landscaping. You don't have to deal with a lot of stuff. So basically, it's an auto pay, right? They have their credit card, and boom, boom, boom. And if they don't pay, you lock them out. So it's a great way to, but it's hard. They're hard to find nowadays.
From both ends of the spectrum.
That's on a completely different subject.
Well, that's interesting, though. It's like sometimes people will say a car wash. Have you owned a car wash?
I've never owned a car wash.
No, okay. Some people say, like car wash is a money, especially, they have the automated one.
The automated, I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. The drive-through or some of those car washes, they're super busy.
And when you say it's hard to find one of those, and you know what I'm going to do is I won't dig into
those are a specialty.
That's what I was
mean by
say.
specialty
yes,
is that even the realtors that they deal
Absolutely.
with storage units,
They don't know.
They have their own clientele of storage
Yes.
unit owners,
Yes.
and they work together.
Yes.
And,
Yep.
and sometimes for you to come in, they'd rather deal with somebody that is familiar with that
experienced with
business
it. Yeah.
than somebody that is fresh off the street.
Right.
You know?
What I was going to say was that, with you having one experience, with a positive experience with the storage unit, I'm not going to dig into it because you know what? I'll go find somebody that's done, 100 storage units, right? And then find out, how do you do that? And how do I find one? And what is,
Yeah. This one, it kind of fell in my lap. And it made sense. I had another opportunity to buy other storage units. I chickened out. I thought it was a little bit too much. By the time I came back to him, he already sold it. And I, had I bought it, it's probably
Right.
It's better than the one that I bought.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, those cash flow and makes it a great investment.
I'm going to get a storage locker expert on the
Or
podcast.
mobile home parks.
Yeah.
Are great.
That's another
great
one.
investments as well. I'm looking into it. I haven't found the right deal, to be honest with you, because you're collecting rent from people that they own a mobile
lot.
home.
Yeah.
So
A little
for
plot.
each lot generates.
Yeah.
You're the landlord basically.
Yes.
Without worrying about repairs.
And the funny thing is every one of these sectors, every sector, you could have a major screw up. And every sector, you could have a major home run.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I did a reel, a very short reel. I was talking about different, somebody said, give us some different ideas. And I was like, well, people shy away from Section 8, and really, you could the government pays, a large portion of it, so therefore it's a guaranteed.
Yep.
You're getting a guarantee, and there's all sorts of nuances about it. I just got this, comment. It's when you're on social media, you get used to comments. But the comment was, that's the worst advice I've ever heard. Section 8 is the worst possible.
Well, you know
thing
what?
ever.
I have a friend of mine that at one time owned over 400 houses.
Yeah.
He dealt with Section 8. He takes Section 8.
Oh.
Problem with Section 8. And they, like you said, guaranteed paid each and every month. And I think if you're on the top of your tenants, they will continue to take care of the property to a certain degree. So I don't think that any type of rental is not a good rental. It could be a good one too.
I mean,
and he didn't mind. As a matter of fact, most of his homes were rented for Section 8.
and he found something and found a way to do that. And I think that to rule out a whole property type, that's terrible. Like you're looking for mobile homes, and one of the guests that I had on early, who has done a lot of multifamily, made a lot of money in multifamily, his family had mobile home parks, and he inherited them, and then he had to run it because he and his sister inherited them, and he had to run it. And he was like, "Oh, it's the worst ever. You become the mayor of a town. It's like the worst thing that ever happened to me was these mobile home
somebody
parks."
will tell you owning a property and having tenants is the worst thing you could do yourself. So everybody has a preference. I love my tenants. I take care of them. I try to meet their needs in every way I can. Everything that makes sense. I want my tenants to be happy, and I want them to live comfortable. And I take care of my properties because I want to continue to own them for a long time.
Yeah, and I have a friend who's identifies phenomenal opportunities, buys them, holds a little bit, but generally is looking to flip them, and he's done so well in real estate. And he hates being a landlord so much that he will leave it empty while he's like figuring out what to do with, he's like, I have no tenants. I will never have tenants. So again, it's, pick a lane, I think, pick a lane, learn how to do it, and find experts that you can follow. Nowadays, it's easier than ever to go on a YouTube or listen to a podcast. Or I promise you, I'm going to have, when we turn the cameras off, I'll tell you some great ideas about mobile home parks. I don't want to do it now because I don't have somebody sitting in front of me. It's like a complete expert. It's like, actually, that's bad advice. You need to do this.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do it till we turn off the camera. But we'll because I can give you some ideas. But I will get somebody who's a mobile home park, expert to talk about.
I would love to hear that. Pod that you. When you do it, let me know. Because I would love to listen to it. It's an area that I would like to be a little bit more familiar with before
I'll tell you where my idea for that is that there was someone who they had a whole professional, they had hundreds and hundreds of mobile home parks. They had a formula or whatever. They were trying to get people to invest in their essentially mobile home fund. And when they gave me the prospectus, I was like, this is like a roadmap of how to do it yourself. Like, I'm not going to, because being a professional investor, I'm not necessarily going to like stick some money in somebody else's fund that I don't really know, but they were pitching it. And so I listened to the pitch, but they leave me with the thing. And it's like, these are exactly the areas. This is what we look for. This is how we've, and they owned, there's like a LoopNet or whatever that
LoopNet for mobile parks?
There's like a LoopNet so LoopNet is where you would find commercial properties,
correct,
listing service. And he said, there's more than one, but there's a kind of a LoopNet for mobile home parks, and his company had gotten so big that they had either purchased it or bought part of it, so they were really getting the pipeline. But you can figure out, figure out a way.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, this is something that I'm curious about,
right?
And I would like to be more familiar with what it goes on in a mobile park.
And I'm curious about storage because I think that is interesting.
Yeah, I think the opportunities are unlimited.
Yes,
if you keep your eyes open and see what you could do with the property, like how you take it to its highest and best use.
So what's the, you could have retired in 1992, which
in 2002.
Oh, sorry, that's right.
I started in 1992.
You could have retired in 2002. You chose not to. What do the next 5 years look like? What's motivating you?
I want to be the quarterback for my sons right now. I think they are set on the right path right now. I would like for them to succeed at a high level just because for the fun of it, because I think they can, and I know they can, and I know I can advise them in a great way. And I think there's so much potential in what they're doing, and they can scale it to a big way. I've learned many years ago, if something you can duplicate, especially in the United States, you could succeed at a super high level. And what they have now is something that they can duplicate and grow it to a high levels that it could be extremely rewarding.
Very cool. And to have an advisor like you,
I do my best. Sometimes I learn from them.
Of course.
And it's the greatest reward is when you get an aha from your son.
Yes.
Now it's like, yes, he's on the right path and he has a great future ahead of him.
Oh, I love it. And my daughter likes to give me an aha, but she gives me the aha with one of these. Like, I told you so, or whatever. Like,
yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So, fire round, and some of these are deep questions. So, I'm not going to comment. I'll stop myself from commenting because we could go on forever with them. But, what's your idea of perfect happiness?
My father once told me there are 3 things that are your life's greatest blessings. 1, you're blessed with your health. And that's the greatest blessing you could have. Because if you have your health, you have everything, right? 2, to be blessed with a great partner. Because that makes your life fulfilled. 3, blessed with great kids. So if you have all of those 3, you have nothing to complain about. right? And I truly believe that is very true. And, spiritually, you have to be connected as well, which I am. And I feel that gives me peace inside. So every morning I wake up and I really, truly count how blessed I am. With friends like you, so many friends, so many people that I think they love me and care about me, and so many people that I love and care about. It's reciprocated. It's what you hold in your heart. That's what people have for you. And I truly have nothing but love in my heart.
Amazing. What's your greatest fear?
My greatest fear is, getting old and being dependent on anybody. I think, in my will, I made sure that I will continue to live in my house and I will have the care that I need in my house, not to go to the home for the elderly and, other people take care of me and things to that effect. That scares me a little bit. So I keep praying that when God wants me, to take me right away, not to prolong my suffering.
Amazing. What's a talent that you would most like to have?
Personally or for, others?
A talent for you.
A talent for me? Wow, that's a great question. I think communication in anything that you do is essential. And I think I'm gifted that I can communicate with others in a way. It comes from a place of contribution, of help, of love, and that makes that simplifies my life. And I think that builds a great connection with others. And I think if I was to look for a talent, I think that would be a talent of being able to communicate with others.
What keeps you up at night?
Honestly, nowadays I sleep like a baby. I don't have any businesses that really I have to worry about. Being able to perform at a high level. My life is nowadays it's kind of simple. Like I said, my energy is it goes into my sons, and seeing them do well, it gives me great reward and gives me great satisfaction, and also helping other people as well. I mean, I like to volunteer for to help people that are in need of help.
What's your most treasured possession?
Oh wow, love of my family. Family is the greatest treasure that you can have. The memories that you have with your family, the trips that you take with your family. Family is the base and foundation for all happiness.
You're fit. LA has great hiking trails. You get this steep hike, you climb all the way up to the top of that hill, and you look down, and there's your family and your clients and business partners, your whole community, and you shout one thing. What do you shout?
I love you all.
Awesome. I love it.
Thank you.